Hello, 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 and welcome to Updog Sports Talk. My name is Matt Miller. Joining me today is Justin McGovern. What's going on, dude?
Hey, it's different being not on the live stream for once. We are excited to bring you our NFL previews. We have been doing these for years, and we are excited to bring this edition today. We are going to talk about the NFC South.
Yeah, it's pretty cool we're doing this as a recording, because if we screw up, we can just cut it out because no one else will know. But yes, our NFL previews are underway with the NFC South, as you can tell by my super dope hat. Justin doesn't really have a whole lot of NFL gear.
No,
I
have next to none.
Ask me about Updog. Got a cool shirt on, supporting our show on our show. For those of you joining us for the first time, we like to stick up for the little guy. Back during COVID, ESPN seemed to only talk about the Tom Brady's, the LeBron Jameses, and really just kind of forgot that FAU, the Bengals and Bills, UTRGV existed.
Most of the teams in the division that we're about to talk about.
Yeah, pretty much the entire... Well, that's when Brady was on the Bucs, so that was about their focus. So I guess kicking off, it would be perfect for us to just start with the absolute little guy of the NFL, the Carolina Panthers. I've seen a lot online about people saying that the Carolinas need an actual football team. And as much of a joke that is, I've been seeing it more and more lately, and it's been pretty concerning. So figured we would start with them. And Justin... they're looking pretty good. What can you tell us about the Panthers coming up?
Yeah, I think this is the year we need to see something come together for them, I feel like. They're finally getting some of the pieces in place, so we can kind of dive into their offseason moves here. So when it comes to free agency, we did not see the Panthers be very aggressive. They mostly tried to build through the draft. No real big moves to talk about here. The only time they really swung for anything was they were trying to get Milton Williams. Obviously, he starred for the Eagles in the Super Bowl. They tried to get him on a big contract, but they did not get him. They got Tershawn Wharton instead to help kind of fill the interior of the defensive line. They really tried to focus up front with the free agent moves they made, though, because they could not get after opposing QBs much last year. I mean, really, a lot of their defense needed some work here. I do like the addition of Bobby Brown, giving them a... Matt?
Bigger, meatier men.
Yeah, all 332 pounds of them to help them against the run. We got Trayvon Morwig coming in, Patrick Jones. So some decent upgrades there on the defensive side. What about the draft?
I think they hit their needs. If you look at the players they drafted, they got Teteroa McMillan. They got Jimmy Horn Jr. late. I think that's kind of a steal. I think he's pretty underrated. They got another tight end, which they're actually now kind of deep, but around the same talent level at tight end. So they have four guys that are basically the same. They addressed running back in the fourth round with Trevor Etienne. They got some defensive linemen, including Nick Scorton, who at one point was really high on people's draft boards. They also got Princely. You want to try it?
I'm not going to try that one.
Umamillion?
From Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Guy who kind of fell in the draft because I think there were some character concerns of him. He also was on Florida before that, and there was an infamous play caught on tape where he was slowly walking in the middle of a play. So obviously, I know there's some character concerns there, but they can coach these guys up. They may have found the guys to help really get this team a pass rush again, because they've lacked a top pass rusher since trading away Brian Byrne.
But I mean, like, when you look at it, they got McMillan, who's a big receiver, who, if you remember AJ Green, I would say he's maybe a slightly less talented version of AJ Green. But they have Xavier Legette, speedster, gonna take the top off the football. Or not?
Yeah.
Pretty
tall.
Yeah. Adam Thielen is still there. Jimmy Horn Jr. is gonna get some reps. David Moore is gonna get some reps. So they have Hunter Renfro's there. I missed that one. But they have some receivers that they can throw to. They've worked on the offensive line. It's Tommy Tremble's time to shine. A lot of people know him from Notre Dame, being a solid tight end at Notre Dame. They've been waiting on him to kind of develop. It's his time now. Bryce Young and Andy Dalton and Jack Plummer. Did you miss that one? They got a good quarterback room. I think Andy Dalton is a knowledgeable quarterback, and if he plays, he can be sufficient enough. If he doesn't play, he can help Bryce Young kind of understand what to do.
So we got to ask the question now, Matt. Do you think Bryce Young, is this his time? Is he ready to show that he's a true NFL franchise quarterback?
I think so. I think they have enough around him now to be like, okay, like, yeah, sorry, we lost your running back yet again. But they got Rico Dowdle. He's a solid running back to pair with Chuba Hubbard. So I think he has some things there, but everybody is young. You know who they kind of like are comparable to right now? How we were viewing the Cardinals last year. Remember how we were saying they've done a really good sneaky job through the draft? I don't think the Panthers were as sneaky with it, but I think they have enough to be like, hey, we are now moving in the right direction. We kind of got our team. Let's move in the right direction. Do I think they're going to compete to the highest level? No. But I think you're going to start seeing Bryce Young play differently. You're going to see these receivers kind of come into their own, and you're going to see the difference with the offensive line. So it's not going to be like remember not top 10 Sports Center. It's not going to be that. Defense, they addressed the defense heavily. I think they desperately needed to do it, but I don't think they, other than Bobby Brown III, I don't really think, I guess Mooring to a certain extent, I don't think they brought in a whole lot to really help their case.
I think, we'll see what Jones can bring. He racked up a few sacks last year as a rotational guy. Now he's going to be asked to step into a bigger role here, so we'll see what he does.
Yeah, I like their roster better than the past couple years, but this was a tear down and build up, and they're in the middle of the build up portion. So give it a couple years and maybe they'll get it figured out. But this is the year where we see what Bryce Young does.
Yeah. And, I think I like that they locked down J.C. Horn. He's their top guy in the secondary. The secondary still requires work, but at least you've made your top guy happy. You have him locked down as a cornerstone of this franchise for a few more years. So that was a good move on their part this offseason.
Yeah. Moving to their arch rivals, aren't they?
I feel like they're not heated.
I don't think they're heated, but I feel like if you consider them rivals, then they're the rivals. But going down south to New Orleans, the Saints. Big thing about the Saints the past few years is cap. They've been in cap hell since Drew Brees left.
Pretty much ever since we have started doing these. We've been doing these for years now. I've lost track of how many years at this point. We have been saying, okay, guys, like, you've been against the cap. Drew Brees is gone. Like, what are we doing here? Just, you need to tear down and get this thing building back up again. You need to quit. But no, they just kept trying to restructure stuff, signing a bunch of old aging vets, and just continued. They pretty much for years, and we complained about this in every single preview we've done of them until this point, they pretty much stuck themselves in purgatory for years now. Finally, this offseason was the time where they decided, okay, this is not working. We need to tear down here and try to build back up again.
Yeah, they brought in Brandon Cooks, brought
him back
little past his prime. Donovan Peoples-Jones, experience to a otherwise not really a whole lot of experience wide receiver core. Brought in a couple of backup linemen, including Will Clapp.
See, that's where I'm a little bit worried is, their offensive line kind of had some question marks, and your biggest move was bringing in Will Clapp.
Well, I mean, like, if they've had some injuries. Penning really wasn't the same after he got hurt.
Well, forgive me. I don't know why I blinked on that, but they did draft Kelvin Banks, which was a huge steal at that.
They went after
a really great pick.
A bigger, meatier man. That was a good pick for them. That was
one of the picks of the draft. Yeah. I don't know why I initially overlooked that right now, but I was even thinking about that before the show. But
outside of him, I mean, Vernon Broughton, maybe good pick. But the story is going to be Tyler Shough. Is he going to Shook?
It's pronounced Shuck.
Shook. Okay. Well, glad I said that out loud. Can Tyler Shough take this team over? Can Spencer Rattler just come out of nowhere? Can Jake Hayner, that guy they drafted a couple years ago. Can he come out of nowhere? My biggest question mark outside of quarterback is running back depth. Like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, not the same player that he used to be. Cam Akers, not the same player he used to be.
Look at these aging guys they brought in. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Cam Akers, like, very wild contingent there they brought in. The thing is, though, and I think you're about to ask the question. I'll let you ask the question, and I might have it.
I mean, what is their identity on offense? Like, you don't know who their quarterback is going to be, and whoever their quarterback is going to be isn't going to have a whole lot of experience. Running back, Kamara has shown that he's either injured or does something stupid in Vegas. So, like, is he going to last the whole season? So, like, what is their identity on offense, Justin?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think it's sort of a weird position right now where they made this pick with Tyler Shook. It's like, okay, you might be thinking of him as a future quarterback, but are you? Like, or are they trying to tank for Arch Manning at this point? That is a serious question that we have to ask.
Yeah,
they at least they have some decent running backs. I actually really like the late round pick there, Devin Neal. Like,
he was solid.
Steal for them. But you're looking at receiver here. You have we have to hope that Chris Olave can stay healthy because he had a rough year of concussions, and when those things start, they may not stop. I'm definitely worried about him, and that just leaves you with Rashid Shaheed, former Big Sky playmaker. He's pretty solid, but what else do you got here?
Not much. I mean, luckily they have Banks, Penning, Ruiz, and Fuaga on the offensive line. Eric McCoy, solid, but the question mark for the offensive line is, will they all stay healthy? Because I can't remember the last time, even with Drew Brees, that they've had a healthy offensive line. But moving on to defense, because we could talk forever on this, but they have Chase Young still. They have Cameron Jordan, not to be confused with Jordan Cameron. They brought in Devon Godshaw. Brian Breesy was their draft pick a couple years ago. They have Pete Warner. They got some guys on defense, but is it going to be enough?
You know what's wild? The Honey Badger is still here. He was such a big name guy, and I feel like for some reason he is just completely gone under the radar here. Like, no one talks about him anymore, but he's still playing pretty good ball.
Yeah.
I really, low key.
They brought in his former replacement, Justin Reed.
Yeah. I was going to say, I low key like what they did in the secondary here. Like, they drafted, they got another corner. They have Kool-Aid McKinstry here. They drafted a couple corners here in Quincy Riley and Jonas Sanker to really add some depth to the position. I think we're starting to see at least the Saints develop a pretty decent defensive side.
Yeah, and that's something we haven't seen in a while. But I mean, like I was asking, is it going to be enough for this offense? I mean, like, if you can make some stops and go real slow on offense and just eat some time, you're not going to have any league leaders in anything on offense. So if they do that, they can pull out some wins. But if some teams start churning against this defense, I don't see how they're going to be able to compete.
Yeah, my challenge is still like where, you have guys who are pretty solid, but like, where is your ferocious pass rusher going to come from? Where are the sacks on third down going to come from? I'm not really sure, looking at it here in July, like when that's going to happen.
I mean, the guy that it's supposed to be is Cameron Jordan, but I mean, he's 15 years into his career, 14 years, something like that. I mean, you can't rely heavily on him. Chase Young, pass rush guy in college, but really hasn't shown a whole lot in pass rush. He's kind of turned into like a Jadeveon Clowney who can stop the run. Brian Breesy can get after the quarterback, but I mean, he's an interior defensive lineman, so like he's not going to get a ton of sacks. So it's got to come from somebody else, and if one of these guys can step up, then maybe they can get this going. But like, I do like what they did on defense, but offensively, I mean, if they get Arch Manning, this is a good team, but we still have to see what Arch Manning does this year to even really be able to put him here.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not going to, we kind of sound like we crowned him as the number one overall pick just because he's the guy everyone's talking about. We're not going to crown them with that just yet. Yeah, I think my last closing thoughts on the Saints here, this looks like a team that's sort of in that transition right now, and that's okay.
Yeah. It beats the hell out of starting over completely. Just tearing it all down to the studs.
It beats being in purgatory, which is where they have been for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens this season, but we aren't too high on the Saints right now. But moving on to one of the most improved teams, Justin, the Atlanta Falcons.
I think so.
It remains to be seen what will happen with Kyle Pitts. I mean, that's a big question mark. His name was floated out there to be a trade candidate to go to the Dolphins, a couple other places as well. But, I mean, we're seeing a brand new Falcons team this year. You have another left-handed quarterback under center in Atlanta for the first time in 20 years. Solid offensive line. Their wide receivers went from laughable a few years ago to they got some guys. Darnell Mooney, Drake London, Raven McLeod, and Jamal Agnew can rotate. They'd be solid. I feel like they need to bring in like one other solid vet.
Yeah. Or you need a guy like Nick Nash could have been. He was an undrafted free agent signing, but he could be a huge steal for them. I don't know how he went undrafted. He's a guy who they could end up finding out of nowhere that ends up being really good.
Yeah. And running back, they're pretty deep. I feel like they got a good room there. So yeah, I think offensively,
Bijan Robinson is obviously one of the best backs in the league and is getting better.
I mean, if they keep Kirk, they have a knowledgeable guy in the quarterback room. If they get rid of Kirk, I still think they can get a pretty penny off of him. Maybe not as much as a few years ago when he was with Minnesota, but I still think they can get a pretty penny out of him for a QB needy team. And then, like,
if Kirk Cousins gets traded, when do you think he would get traded?
I would say either playing out the whole training camp, seeing who gets injured, how long those injuries are, or, I mean, not many moves at the deadline, but maybe he's a big name that could be moved by the deadline. Early in the season, we see one or two quarterbacks that typically go down, so I think he would be a solid guy to trade for, but do you want to take on that contract? I mean, who knows, but I like their offense quite a bit. I mean, it's going to be pretty fun to watch them.
Yeah. What would you say? Let's give one strength and one weakness of the offense.
One strength? I'm going to go offensive line.
Yep. And then mine, I'm going to go quarterback. I'm going to say Michael Penix is going to become a star.
I would agree.
And then weakness?
Wide receiver depth.
Yeah. I'm not really sure. I mean, Mooney's an okay target. Drake London is your main guy. I still would like to see them have a little bit more at receiver.
Yeah. I mean, and those guys aren't going to play every down either. Like, they're going to be out there quite a bit, but they're not going to be out there every single play. They're going to need some breathers every now and then. But moving on to what I want to talk about, Justin, is the Atlanta Falcons defense. They didn't just draft one pass rusher in the first round. They drafted two pass rushers in the first round. James Pierce Jr., Jalen Walker, two studs. Then they brought in Xavier Watts to go to kind of pair with Jesse Bates and Jordan Fuller. They still have Mike Hughes. They still have A.J. Terrell. Their nickel, I think they can...
D. Alford is one of the better nickel corners out there.
Yeah, so and they just brought in Billy Bowman Jr. in the fourth round. I think he's a good pickup for them. I think he was underrated in the draft. Despite addressing the pass rush, they did bring in Leonard Floyd. They brought in Divine Diablo. Remember him?
Yeah.
Morgan Fox. They got some guys on defense, but what I want to see is depth. How can you rotate these guys to still have success on the field? I really like the Falcons this year. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think they can push the Bucs and maybe end up even, I don't know about winning the division, but I definitely think they can be a playoff team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's playoffs or bust for the Falcons for sure. Yeah, looking at defense for sure. I like the secondary. I think the secondary might be their biggest strength in defense. I want to see how ready the pass rush is to step up. They have I think we need to see some depth step up in some areas, but overall, I feel like there's a good amount of depth on this defense, so I'm pretty happy with that. This is a defense that's it's getting hard to pick at. Like, when we entered the draft, we talked about how they've needed the pass rush for almost a decade now, and then they drafted two edge rushers in the first round, and all of a sudden it's like, okay.
Yeah, they did that, and everybody's jaws were on the floor. Like,
yeah.
Instantly they won the draft. They didn't have to do anything else, but instantly they won the draft.
Yeah.
Moving on to their rival and last year's NFC South champion, The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Solid team, couple pieces away from a Super Bowl a couple years ago. Super Bowl appearance, who knows if they would have won. I think they've turned around pretty nicely since Tom Brady left. I mean, when he left, they had wide receiver depth. They were good on the offensive line, but they moved some people around. I think they're back.
Yeah.
When they got Baker Mayfield, I immediately said, watch this team turn around and be good. And they turned around. I mean, winning the division the last 2 or 3 years, the biggest news for them was bringing back Mike Evans. That was huge for them. If they would have let him walk, you could have just started tearing this thing down.
Yeah. They didn't just keep Mike Evans, though. They kept Chris Godwin, too.
Yes.
We thought for sure one of them had to be gone this offseason. And instead, they're still around. And you look at this team, the receivers they have are just ridiculous.
Yeah, I know.
Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, first-round pick Emeka Egbuka, Jalen McMillan. When Godwin got hurt, he stepped up. So he's there as well. Trey Palmer even had some decent performances when injuries happened in front of him. I guess Sterling Shepard's here, but I don't know what he's going to bring.
He's a cut candidate. You even got
a steal and 7th-round pick, Tez Johnson. Yeah. You can go 7 deep on this thing where they have just dynamic receivers all over the field. Like, it gets to a point where it's like, how many receivers do you need, guys?
How many receivers do they need? God, I hope they get it.
And then you look at running back, and it's very funny how this worked out because they didn't spend a high pick on running backs, but with Bucky Irving, Rashad White, and even Sean Tucker, like, you have 3 backs who Irving's going to lead the way. He's the clear star. But any of the other 2 could step up and have a big game if they're asked to. That's the impressive thing about that. And we need to talk about how this offensive line has progressed too. They were one of the worst in the NFL just a couple years ago. And now instantly transformed to one of the best.
Yes. And that's led to Baker Mayfield's success. I mean, Todd Bowles recognized that when Baker Mayfield was in Cleveland, he had a solid offensive line. And he played pretty well. Fans, weather, whatever, all against him in Cleveland. Fans, weather, whatever, for him in Tampa. He's thriving there. Todd Bowles is on the hot seat, in my opinion, a couple years ago and saved his job because of Baker Mayfield. You can put Baker Mayfield in MVP conversations because of this offensive line. He reminds me of like a early Drew Brees, not quite hitting his full potential, kind of on the shorter side.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it helps when you have one of the best offensive lines in the league and you have 2 of the best receivers in the league and you just drafted one of the best receivers in college football. The question mark has always been defense. They scrapped it down a couple years ago. They brought in some guys. They kind of held it together with some Elmer's glue, and they're trying to piece it back together. I mean, they still have Vita Vea. They got Kalijah Cansey a couple years ago. They brought in Hassan Reddick. Is he the same player? Who knows?
I think Hassan Reddick is a guy I can kind of point to, and he could have a rebound year. He hated the Jets. He hated being on that team so much.
Yes. One of my favorite picks that they got in this draft was Benjamin Morrison in the 2nd round.
I knew you were going to say that.
I had to say it. I mean, I'm a Notre Dame fan. I watched this kid since he was a true freshman at Notre Dame, and he is going to come in, be able to take some of the pressure off Dean, who I have heard Dean in trade conversations, not from sources saying the Bucs are going to trade him, but other teams are interested in trading for him. They got Jacob Parrish, solid draft pick. They still have Winfield Jr. I think they're starting to piece some of this together, but they're running out of time with Levante David, and I feel like even Vita Vea is running out of time here. I think it's going to be harder and harder to pay him, but I think they have a solid enough defense. I think what they're doing is going to work, but you know who their defensive coordinator is, Justin?
Who is their defensive coordinator?
Larry Foote. Do you remember him? Big Steelers guy. A part of those like really good, stout, late 2000s, early 2010 Steelers defenses. And I think he brings some of that knowledge of those teams. So they don't need big names. I think they can get it done, but they got the Falcons right on their tail. Justin.
Yeah, if there's an issue for the Buccaneers, it's gonna be the defensive side for sure, especially the secondary. That's what worries me. So that could be their downfall. We'll have to see. Now we can transition into let's go with our division picks here. Our division picks. So I think I'm going to go in order here. I'm going to go with Buccaneers, Falcons, Panthers, Saints.
I would have to agree with that.
Oh, you're going the same way.
I'm going the same way. I mean,
really? I thought you were going to pick the Falcons for sure.
No, I don't think the Falcons. I think they have a better defense, but there's still a lot of question marks. Like Penix hasn't played in the NFL, really. I mean, he's played a few games, but he really hasn't played in the NFL. Baker Mayfield has the experience. They have a better offensive line, better receiving core. I think that it's going to be the transitioning of power here soon, but I don't think it's going to be this year. I think this may be the last year of the Bucs run unless they can fill some holes on defense.
Okay, and then the other question is, do we see 2 playoff teams from this division?
I think so. I think the NFC East is starting to become too competitive. When you have 3 teams that are fighting for spots, they start beating up on each other. I mean, just look at the AFC North every year. One usually gets kicked out. I think this is the year we can see the Falcons squeak in and pull what Minnesota pulled last year. Maybe not a 2-loss team, but I think they can get it done.
Now, here's my last fascinating take here. While I think the Buccaneers are going to win the division, I actually think the Falcons are the team that's better built to contend in the playoffs.
Yes.
And it's because of that defense. When you get in the playoffs, you can typically find ways to hide a flawed offense, but in the playoffs, you cannot hide a flawed defense.
No, you have to have, I would say, a top 15 defense, and I don't think the Bucs are going to have a top 15 defense.
You have to have a top 15 defense to advance anywhere in the playoffs, unless you have Josh Allen.
Yeah. Well, Justin, do you think the Falcons can go deep into the playoffs? Or just surprise a couple people in the first round?
Surprise a couple people in the first round. Maybe, depending on what matchup you end up with, maybe they win another game and everyone goes, whoa, look at them. And they make the conference championship game. I think that's probably where the run would end. But yeah, I think they could win their game or 2.
Yeah. Well, that is all the time we have today for the NFC North. Whoa, South, wrong direction. That is all we have time today for the NFC South. Follow us at Updog Sports Talk on all social media. Follow us at Updog Sports Talk on wherever you get your podcasts. We're not going to be live on YouTube while we're doing these videos, but we will resume live shows in the fall. Thank you guys for joining us, and catch you later.